Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. We're going to head on out to Santa Anita to preview the China Doll on Sunday. Gino Buccola alongside Mike Beer. Producer Bobby pulling the strings back there. And we want to remind all of you right now, we are on the road to the Derby. Daily Racing Form has a very cool Road to the Derby package where you will save up to 37% and you can get past performances for all of the big racing days that are built around Kentucky Derby prep races, Kentucky Derby points races. A couple of them this weekend. I think two more of them next weekend. Santa Anita, they'll have their big day in a few weeks from now. So let's head on out there, see if we can pad the bankroll and get set for some of these big racing days. Not a huge field for this one, Mike, but a couple talented runners in here. Castellu's in pretty nice form right now for trainer Bob Baffert, has won back-to-back stakes races. To the outside, Will Then was actually cross-entered, was actually entered in the Bourbonette Oaks, is going to stay, though, and run in this race most likely, and is coming off of a win in the Grade 3 Jimmy Durante and has won back-to-back races. So those two will take the bulk of the money in here. I think both are talented and kind of a little different running styles. Castellu will be more forwardly placed, and Will Then will probably want to sit and make one late run.
Yeah, some horses with some ability in here, though, Gino. I mean, they're all relatively lightly raced. Trips will be important, even though it's a really short field, because as you've already pointed out, Will Then could be one of the favorites, and it's not like she's got a ton of speed. So we'll see if she's compromised. But, even outside of the two likely favorites, I mean, there are cases to be made for each of the other three horses in here.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And we could take a look at the pace projector and see what Timeform US thinks. They have Amarita out front. I don't know if Castellu will be this far back, like on the pace projector. I'd imagine Castellu. Pratt is really good with this, Mike. So good at like judging the pace, when to sit close, put the pressure on. Sometimes he sneaks and takes the lead from horses that you think might be in front of him. He's really good at like judging the pace.
I agree with you. Listen, there's a way to look at this race and just say, if Pratt decides that he wants to lead with Castellu, she will have the lead in here. She's got speed.
Absolutely. Completely agree. So let's meet the field here for this short group in the China Doll, $100,000 up for grabs. These are 3-year-old fillies, and we start out with Tequila and Therapy. She's not been bad in her recent races, Mike. She's just a little bit below some of the top tier horses in this group. She was fourth, about 3 lengths off. She made a 3-wide bid at the top of the lane. She just couldn't quite go on with the others, but she's not that far behind them. I just wonder, at a small field like this, is she going to be able to get the trip that she needs to win? Because she's probably not as fast as a couple of the others in here.
Probably she'll need a breakthrough to a career best effort if she's going to win here. But you're right, she's a little underrated. A real nice Calbred, and she ran fine last time. I kind of agree with your assessment. She finished behind a couple of these, and she, listen, it just seemed like she wasn't quite good enough to beat them. If you wanted to, dress her up a little bit, though, you could just say, she was on the outside the entire way that day. The horse that finished 1, 2, and 3 in there all just rode the rail into the stretch and then started running. This horse was on the outside the entire way.
Yeah, hopefully different trip today, right? Saves all the ground in here and comes running, and maybe she can pick up a length or two on some of these other horses who didn't even beat her by 2 when it was all said and done. Castellu was good early in career, precocious, and kind of tailed off for him a little bit, and then recently has really bounced back, like 3 nice performances in a row. 2 of them are stakes wins. The third was a runner-up effort in the Grade 3 Jimmy Durante, but that was behind Will Then, Mike, who she's going to have to face again in here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the race you're going to have to reconcile because Castellu, when Will Then beat her 3 starts back, Will Then just ran right over the top of her. So she's going to have to do better than that. But since that race, Castellu, to me anyway, maybe you don't agree with this or maybe you do, she's gotten way better. She's clearly moved forward. Her last 2 races are both really strong performances. And as we've already pointed out, there's a chance that she just clears off and gets loose on the lead in this race.
And she's just got more recent form too. Yeah. We haven't seen Will Then since the end of November. So Castellu is a little bit better, a little bit sharper, and could have a tactical advantage as well if you're looking for reasons to kind of flip them. Interesting to see what kind of price they end up being. Yeah. To me, a lot of the time, that's the determining factor, right? Who's going to be the better price, offer us a little more value. Amarita got the lead, was able to clear off, was able to hold off, take another card, and Tequila and Therapy in that race on February the 21st. So, I mean, maybe versions of this race where this is a horse who can either get in front of Castellu or get a forward trip in a race, Mike, where small field, if they're not all going at each other, that's how she probably could win this race or could run really well in here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's 2 for 3 going this distance on the grass in her career. She's been on the lead in all 3 of those races. So don't be surprised when they get aggressive here. I just, thought that she was kind of hard to like, Gino, mostly because of her most recent start, which she did win and she did beat a couple of these fillies, but they just handed her the lead in there and just
Yeah.
sort of let her walk up front. I don't see that trip coming for her today.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? I think Castilou is going to be putting so much pressure on her and breathing down her neck that it's just not going to be an easy trip for her. Though number 4, Take Another Card, I think overall has shown some ability, Mike. She's kind of inside. She was able to angle out. I did think she had dead aim, and she kind of seems like she took a few strides to get going in a race and kind of took another couple strides to get like built up. So she might need a little more ground even than this mile. If they were going a little farther, I might like her better. But if you were looking for a horse who I could see maybe sneaking away and being like playable in this race, it could be her. If you look at the race and say maybe Castilou and Amarita can kind of go after each other early, maybe Will Then isn't 100% cranked up for this race, I could see this horse being one that you talk yourself into if she's the right price.
I agree with all that, and we'll just see if she can take. She's another one who needs probably one more step forward, but she's got a lot of talent. I'm with you. When you go back and watch that last race when Amarita beat her, coming down like past the 8th pole, it felt like Take Another Card really had the momentum, and I was like, oh, she's actually gonna go by this horse even without a good setup in this race, and maybe she just flattened out a little bit at the end of that race, but I still thought that she ran well. Her first 2 starts, I know they're against Calibreds. Man, were they impressive. Her career debut sprinting, she was so impressive winning that race after totally blowing the start. She's still really green. She's not a great gate horse, which you hope that she would clean that up. But man, she's got some real talent, I think.
Rounding out the field is Will Then, who, as I've learned now in talking with you, Mike, one thing that we can very easily do when horses don't really fire well at Kentucky, just put a right through that and then look at the other races, because Will Then came back after that Kentucky debut, was very good at Woodbine, and then came down to Del Mar, wins the Grade 3 Jimmy Durante. So this is a solid horse who was very good at 2, will now be making her first start at 3. Jonathan Thomas had 2 horses entered for the Bourbonnette Oaks this weekend. He's going to keep Will Then in Southern California, and he'll have another horse who I think is kind of live in that race also. So what do you think about Will Then rounding out this field?
She's just looked really good to me in all of her starts, even the Kentucky Downs race, which you don't want to be hard on her for, but that pace was wicked for that kind of a race, and she was up close to it. Her 2 wins are really, really strong. Jenny, you mentioned that he cross-entered her to Turfway. He had her entered in a stakes race against the boys here last weekend. He ultimately scratched, obviously, to await a different spot, but they obviously like this horse a little bit to even think about running her against the Colts. We'll see if her main rival, who I think is her main rival, Castilou, can turn the tables on her now. But you go back and watch that Jimmy Durante. I mean, Will Then just ran right over the top of that horse in that race.
Yeah. And I think when it comes down to it, Mike, and we pull up selections here, I just think she's better than this group, honestly. I think it's a nice starting point. And with this barn, Jonathan Thomas, I don't really worry about like slight layoffs or horses going long off of the bench. Like they get these horses ready to fire when they're ready to show up. And we have the same 3 horses, just a slightly different order. I just don't think this is a race where you could get much value on the win end.
Me either. It's not bettable to me. I prefer the 5. I just think there's a chance that she's actually pretty good. I am worried that Pratt is going to steal this thing on the front end with the 2.
Yep. So if you see it the way that we do, maybe you see it differently, we'd always love to hear from you. Feel free to throw a comment down in the section here on the YouTube. Subscribe to the channel below, and we'll see you again real soon right here on the DRF YouTube.